Yo, guys, climate regulations are losing support around the world. This is real interesting. Banks are pulling out now, and now they are side-eyeing climate regulators. And also, I wanted to talk about, this is a great opportunity. I got a couple articles about how many of what we see with these climate initiatives and these climate regulations they're not only not good for business, they're not good for the climate, they don't do anything to actually improve sustainability. We can talk about what some actual sustainability systems might look like. And also, this whole consensus that we're presented with in the media, I want to talk about how it's not even true. So let's get into it, guys. Goldman Sachs Group is quitting, a major climate group for banks, as increasingly complex regulations and U.S. political attacks lead to some of the financial industry's biggest firms to rethink such affiliations. The bank's decision to leave the Net Zero Banking Alliance was mainly motivated by the need to comply with mandatory reporting guidelines, according to a person familiar with the matter who asked not to be identified, discussing internal deliberations at the bank. The person pointed out the rollout of the European Union's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive as a key development guiding Goldman Sachs' approach to the matter. Goldman Sachs said in a statement Friday, it is very focused on the increasingly elevated sustainability standards and reporting requirements imposed by regulators around the world. Interesting. The firm has been laying the groundwork for its departure from the NZBA for a while now, and clients and stakeholders who have been consulted on the matter, the person familiar with the decision said. So, interesting. They have been very focused, not on increasing sustainability standards and reporting requirements. They've been very focused on how regulators have been increasing and elevating sustainability standards and reporting requirements around the world. Wow. So that does not sound very friendly, and that sounds almost like they're kind of side-eyeing them, doesn't it? A spokesperson for NZBA declined to comment. The Goldman announcement emerged on the same day that money manager Franklin Templeton said it's leaving Climate Action 100 Plus, another group formed to press companies to cut emissions. Interesting. Wow. NZBA sits under the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, whose unveiling of 130 trillion of financial sector commitments to net zero was one of the highlights of the COP26 climate summit in Scotland of 2021. Back then, major banks including JP Morgan Sachs, Chase & Co. and Citigroup proudly announced their membership as climate finance morphed into one of Wall Street's most popular new areas. Interesting. Wow. As time went on, however, climate coalitions started to face internal tensions as some of the members balked at the prospect of committing to explicit financial requirements. Look, hey, man, we were down for it as long as it just made us look good, okay? Are you saying we actually got to do something? No. Look, I'm down to tell other people they got to do something, but me? No. That's how that reads to me, dude. Man, that was followed by a slump in green asset values, an increasingly aggressive political backdrop in which so-called woke capitalism was vilified by the Republican Party as a distraction from fiduciary goals. Whatever, man. The left wing owns the media so hard. At the same time, firms have been struggling to adapt to a deluge of environmental, social, and governance requirements being enforced by regulators in key markets. The EU's disclosure framework is the furthest advanced and also the widest reaching in scope. As a result, even companies based outside the bloc need to observe the EU rules if they are targeting clients there. In its statement, Goldman said the firm's priorities remain to help our clients achieve their sustainability goals and to measure and report on our progress. The departure from the NZBA coincides with intense and growing pressure from the Republican Party on anything that smacks of ESG. Well, I mean, yeah, dude. This is exactly how corporations are making their move to subvert governmental authority over individual power over our lives, man. No, dude, if we allow this stuff to continue, we will be living in some sort of cyberpunk corporate fascist nightmare that has shifted simply to use the language of emotional rhetoric and the language of empathy to hijack our minds, to manufacture our consent, man. We need to crack down on ESG now. This stuff is straight out of China, surveillance state stuff, dude. If you don't don't act right in China, and even if you didn't break the law and you got a low ESG score, dude, you walking around and your face gets put up on billboards of them just making fun of your ass as you walk down the street. What is that? Dude, we can't live in a society like that, man. The whole point is to allow individuals to explore their own avenues and to define what their priorities are themselves. We are a giant neural network. We essentially in the we are a single fourth dimensional entity experiencing itself via the third dimension. We essentially are a giant cell, right? Our collective existence is a giant cell, and each one of us as individuals are cilia on the end of that cell, reaching out and feeling conceptually where this cell needs to go to navigate for success into the future, right? And dude, we can't do that if we sit there and centralize the absolute control of our society and decision making. We have to allow individuals the freedom and the sensation of freedom to actually explore intellectually. And this kind of stuff is exactly what doesn't do it, man. Centralization is not the way to go, and centralization of culture and control is not the way to go. That suit followed bans against ESG investing across numerous Republican states, with pressure expected to step up now that Donald Trump is headed for a second term in the White House. Against that backdrop, other climate finance groups have been losing members. In August, asset manager arm of Goldman Sachs said it quit the CA 100+. Other firms have left the coalition, including State Green Global Advisors, Pacific Investment Management Co., and most recently, Franklin Templeton, which manages about $1.6 trillion of assets. A spokesperson for the CA 100+ said that while the group is disappointed with the departures, it respects each investor's decision. A separate climate alliance for insurers, the NZIA, was gripped by an exodus last year as firms responded to threats of antitrust litigation brought by Republican state attorney general. Yeah, man, come on, dude. You guys can't be trying to dominate people's decisions like this. They try to collectively use their power. Dude, you know what they're trying to be like? They're trying to be like unions. You know how unions use collective bargaining rights against corporations? They're trying to be like unions of corporations, using their massive collective wealth and advertising revenue to absolutely dominate what our culture looks like so that they can try to convince kids, the next generation coming up, that this is what it's like to be a normal person. No, you don't conform unless you think these things. Dude, I'm so tired of them. Dude, we have to fit. I pump it all the time. It's just the start of a conversation, guys. If you please check out my alternative economic system. I got it on my website. I think it's a very valuable idea on how we can build an alternative economic system. And also, it's designed to function in tandem with that alternative education system. Yo, go to itschromo.com, hit all posts, Control F, or you hit the 3 buttons on your phone, find in page, and that's the search feature. I could build a search feature in there, whatever. I'm a minimalist. I didn't feel like spending too much time on it. I just kind of whipped everything up myself, bro. But Control F, hit the 3 buttons, find in page, and then search education, and then search economic, you know what I mean? And then you will find both plans, man. Please check them out, guys. I think you guys might find it really interesting and kind of coming out of left field. I try to come at things from a different perspective, man. But a separate climate alliance, NZIA, was gripped by an exodus last year as firms responded to antitrust litigation brought by Republican state attorneys. And a net zero coalition for asset managers suffered a blow when Vanguard, the world's second largest money manager, quit back in 2022. Yeah, you're done. If Vanguard's leaving, it's over. Goldman Sachs' decision to withdraw from the NZBA marks the group's highest profile loss to date. It was able to avert a potential walkout by a group of key members 2 years ago. Bloomberg had previously reported JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America Corp. had all raised the prospect of quitting. People familiar with the matter had said at the time they ended up staying in the group after NZBA updated its guidelines to give members the freedom to ignore a proposal to phase out the financing of fossil fuels. So, yeah, bro, well, not to mention so many sustainable energy programs are worse for the environment than fossil fuels, man. I've got an article called Environmental Policies where I talk about the failure of a number of environmental policies and how they're really not designed for the environment. What they're designed for is to push a neoliberal agenda and to reduce class mobility. But that's a whole other story. Go check out that article, guys. NZBA asked members to agree to work toward a net zero financed emissions by 2050 and to set an interim of 5-year targets towards that goal. CSRD, meanwhile, is an environmental and social sustainability reporting framework. The alliances may have been useful in centering the issue to helping underscore that finance is central to challenge in the energy transition. said Lisa Sachs, who heads Columbia University Center on Sustainable Investment, but they didn't really help solve the problem. Neither do any of these environmental policies that they offer. And I know dude, permaculture. Yo, you want to reduce your footprint on the environment. Permaculture is the way to do it. And we get into it in a little bit in a second. The alliances have been useful in centering the issues, helping to underscore that finance is central to the challenge, but they didn't really help to solve the problem. The apparent fraying of voluntary climate groups linked to GFANZ isn't necessarily a sign that Wall Street is abandoning the green agenda, according to David Carlin, former head of risk at National Environment Program Finance Initiative, which convened the NZBA. It's a shame to see leading institutions leave these alliances, but it's important to note that they aren't repudiating their net zero commitments. Of course they're not. That wouldn't be politically safe. Such coalitions help firms share best practices and consider how to manage the challenges of the transition. Also, he's maintaining PR. However, firms are constantly weighing these benefits against the political heat of poking their heads above the parapet on climate online. At the same time, the opportunities for investing in the energy transition are increasing, Columbia Sachs said. There's more financing of green technologies. Goldman Sachs said it's made significant progress in recent years in its net zero goals, and we look forward to making further progress. That includes expanding to additional sectors in the coming months, the firm said. Goldman Sachs executive officer David Solomon said the firm's latest sustainability report that Goldman will file a global firm-wide report next year under the EU CSRD, becoming one of the first U.S. banks to do so. This new requirement is expansive in scope, covering not only our financial exposure, but also our environmental and social impact, he said. Great. Awesome. Cool. Awesome, dude. Yo, check this out, man. No, this whole thing, man, I'm glad that it's happening, dude. I'm glad that these companies are finally waking up to and leaving some of these initiatives. I'm not happy that governments are now trying to adopt the role. Although it does change the game in terms of, in my opinion, this was corporations move. All of this language of empathy, a lot of these more modern environmental pushes, and the way that they combined with the whole rainbow agenda that we saw from these corporations, in my opinion, was part of a larger push for corporations to begin to use their exposure, their financial assets and their influence over culture through advertising to start to subvert the sovereignty of governments. But I got something here, guys, that I would like to show you real quick. Silencing of climate skepticism, okay? Modern era, ancient fallacies, all right? Because, in my opinion, so much about what we hear about climate change is really just a modern version of the whole agenda that we've got with basically, it's governments like pharaohs back in the day trying to convince us that the climate changing and bad weather is our fault, man. And they've been doing it since the days of the pharaohs. And I want to just get the boom, got the margins right here for you guys. And basically, I'm breaking down here in this article how they use really fascistic techniques to try to falsify this entire climate consensus, okay? So let's break it down for a second here real quick. A study published in the Journal of Environmental Research Letters found that out of 1,000 peer-reviewed papers on climate change, 97% of them endorsed the consensus view that humans are causing global warming. I want to explore how such an outcome becomes possible and why it reflects authoritarian control over the climate science industry. A lot of people say, oh, this is consensus. No, what it is shutting down any sort of alternative viewpoint. Last summer, the International Monetary Fund canceled a speech by John Clauser. By John Clauser, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. So this was no longer last month. This came out a couple months ago. So this was month before this last month. I mean, summer before this last summer. A Nobel Prize-winning physicist who publicly disagrees with the current climate change narrative. Head of the nonprofit which Clauser is affiliated, the CO2 Coalition, has said that he and other members have been delisted from LinkedIn for their dissenting views. A prestigious academic journal retracted a peer-reviewed research paper doubting a climate emergency after negative media coverage. Roger Plike Jr. was then blocked on Twitter, now X, for pointing out one of the most egregious failures in scientific publishing I have ever seen. 1 month later, 1,600 scientists, including Klauser Ivergaver of Norway, formally declared there is no climate emergency, pointing out how climate advocacy has devolved into mass hysteria. If this is what settled science looks like, I'm scared. The cultural zeitgeist demands complete transformation of our society based on a narrative built upon silencing legitimate dissent and without real debate. Our current goal is to have the U.S. carbon emissions by 2035 and achieve net zero emissions by 2050 to stave off man-made existential threat to our existence. It's a crazy narrative, and they've been presenting us with these narratives since the days of the pharaohs. And it's crazy how we had a break in this country from it. But then back in the 50s, it was global warming. Global cooling, global warming, global cooling. And now it's like, dude, they're just like, oh man, when the climate changes, it's you guys driving your cars, man. Logical fallacies and ancient origins. The push to silence climate skeptics is rife with logical fallacies. The most glaring is the appeal to authority, where opinions of supposed experts are used to shut down debate rather than promote understanding. This tactic mirrors the behavior of pharaohs of ancient Egypt who claimed bad weather was a reflection of angry gods to control their populace. Today, so-called climate crisis is wielded in much the same way, as an unquestionable truth used to justify sweeping changes without proper scrutiny. They also use ad hominem attacks, a common tactic seen in the treatment of climate scientists like Klauser and Plike. Rather than engaging with their arguments, climate advocates seek to discredit them personally, suggesting that any dissent must be rooted in ulterior motives rather than questioning genuine scientific inquiry. Questioning the narrative. Many of these climate skeptics reject optimistic scenarios of economic prosperity and advocate for net zero around the world. They say that global emission reducing targets are not achievable on such an accelerated timetable without lowering living standards and unleashing worldwide political unrest. What advocates of climate action are trying to do is scare the bejesus out of the public so they think we need to act fast. Stephen Koonin, author of Unsettled, What Climate Science Tells Us, What It Doesn't, and Why It Matters. You have to balance the certainties and uncertainties of the changing climate, the risks and hazards, and many other factors, he adds. Those dissenters don't all agree on the scientific questions and do not seek a single voice. Klauser, for example, is a self-styled climate denialist who believes climate is regulated by clouds, while Pike, a political scientist at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and Bjorn Lomborg, the former director of Danish Environmental Assessment Institute, acknowledge that humans are affecting climate, but says there is sufficient time to adapt. The dissenters do, however, agree on that the public and government officials are getting a one-sided, apocalyptic account that strokes fear, politicizes science, and misuses climate modeling and shuts down debate. They also say it is a troubling sign for scientific integrity, and they are systematically sidelined and diminished by government funding agencies, foundation grant makers, academic journalists, and much of the media. Delving into their claims, Real Clear Investigations reviewed a sampling of their books, articles, and podcast interviews. This loose coalition of writers and thinkers acknowledges that the climate is warming, but they typically ascribe as much, if not more, influence to natural cycles and climate variability than to human activities, such as burning fossil fuel. Here's just laying out the fallacious arguments in the name of climate change, okay? Appeal to fear. The narrative of an impending climate catastrophe is often driven by fear, urging immediate action without sufficient debate or considering of the alternative perspective. This fallacy aims to evoke an emotional response rather than a rational one, reminiscent of ancient leaders who would invoke fear of divine retribution to maintain control of their populace. False dichotomy. The presentation of the issue is a stark choice between immediate radical action or global disaster that ignores the possibility of more measured, gradual approaches. This binary thinking stifles constructive dialogue and exploration of viable solutions. Cherry picking the data. Climate activists often highlight extreme weather events and worst case scenarios while ignoring the data that suggests more nuanced reality. This use of selective evidence undermines the credibility of the climate narrative and prevents a balanced understanding of the issue, like the specific times in which they measure the polar ice caps and the size of the polar ice caps, or the way that they are constantly going back and adjusting the historical climate data in order to make it look like a way more extreme weather change, or also the way they are ignoring a history of CO2 emissions and weather temperatures worldwide that were much higher than they are today. Bandwagon fallacy. The instance that a consensus among scientists equates to an unquestionable truth pressures individuals to conform to the majority view, stifling independent thought and critical analysis. Dude, whenever you hear somebody say everyone agrees, automatically just walk away. That person is not even trying to operate from an intelligent perspective. The broader implications: killing the fossil fuel industry in an effort to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, as advocated by the United Nations and promoted domestically by the Biden administration, will destroy the nation's economy, resulting in depression and political instability. Developing regions will pay the highest price, while our geopolitical adversaries will simply ignore the mandate. There is no evidence supporting the causality of a gradually warming planet to the frequency or intensity of weather events. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change itself has expressed low confidence in such weather events can be linked to human activities. There has been no increase in deaths from extreme weather events over the past century. In fact, deaths are often caused more by cold weather, 8 times, than hot weather. Overall weather-related mortality has fallen about 99% since the beginning of the 21st century. The fear-mongering is so severe that one would think extreme weather is a great threat is a greater threat ever than our history. Yet as a populace, we are safer from climate-related disasters than ever before, said statistician and author Bjorn Lomborg. Dude, climate science a field hacked by politics, reclaiming the discourse. I got some clicks that you can read more about the subject if you want. Dude, look, man, and not only that, dude, here is exactly why the environmental policies that we are being exposed to are a misnomer, right? And a complete fabrication, okay? Environmental policies, how they're reinforcing economic barriers while being counterproductive. Environmental policies like carbon tax and green energy initiatives and sustainable development are often promoted as necessary steps to protect the planet. But beneath the surface, there is a growing concern that these well-meaning policies may unintentionally reinforce economic barriers, particularly for small entrepreneurs and lower class individuals striving for upward mobility. It is another excuse for corporations to lobby government for expensive regulatory barriers into industries so they can entrench their position. This is not about the climate. It's not about saving the environment. It's about reducing class mobility so you can't challenge their position. Are these environmental strategies, while framed as solutions to the climate crisis, actually serving to entrench corporate power and hinder opportunities for those at lower ends of the socioeconomic spectrum? Could permaculture offer a more effective solution addressing both environmental and economic justice in ways that current policies fail to do? Surface appeal to environmental policy. It's hard to argue against protecting the environment. After all, reducing pollution, cutting carbon emissions, and promoting energy renewable are worthy goals. The governments around the world have rolled out initiatives like carbon taxes, carbon trading systems, and green energy subsidies as part of the plan to tackle climate change. Jesus Christ. At first glance, these policies seem straightforward. Charge companies and consumers for emitting carbon. Incentivize the shift to renewable energy. Funnel resulting revenue towards sustainable development. The goal is to reduce humanity's impact on the environment while shifting towards cleaner, more efficient technologies. However, a sustainable alternative like permaculture offers a real grassroots method to achieving environmental goals without creating additional barriers for those trying to build businesses or support their families. Instead of relying on market-based fixes, permaculture works within local ecosystems to regenerate the environment, reducing the need, whatever. Neoliberalism in disguise. What many people don't realize is that environmental initiatives are often influenced by neoliberal economic principles, which prioritize market-based solutions to social and environmental problems. In theory, carbon markets and taxes make sense, but a price on pollution, put a price on pollution, and business will innovate to avoid paying the cost. But in practice, these policies often benefit large corporations with resources to adapt, while small businesses and entrepreneurs are left struggling to comply. For example, large corporations can purchase carbon credits to offset their emissions, making it easier for them to continue their operations without making real changes to their production process. Meanwhile, a lower-class entrepreneur might not have the financial flexibility to absorb the cost of carbon taxes or invest in expensive green technologies. Permaculture, by contrast, offers a low-cost, sustainable approach that businesses and entrepreneurs can adopt. By promoting self-sustaining ecosystems, minimizing external input, permaculture practices not only reduce the environmental harm, but also lower business costs, making it easier for new ventures to thrive. But also, the entire point is to start a narrative where if you're talking to a leftist who's all about we need carbon taxes, we need this, that, and the third, send them this article, because non-market-based decisions that do not support the further entrenchment of neoliberalism are more effective than these stupid market-based decisions. These people are brainwashed into supporting the further entrenchment of corporate power, guys. I get further into the barrier of entry for small entrepreneurs, exactly how this works, exactly how larger corporations are greenwashing. So they use, this whole article uses the language that people on the left can relate to. It's designed for you to shoot them this link, right? So I really think why targeting carbon emissions is a misnomer. One of the key issues with current environmental policies is the disproportionate focus on carbon emissions, particularly at individual consumer levels. While carbon emissions are important in the context of climate change, targeting them as a main environmental culprit is misleading for several reasons. First, a vast majority of carbon emissions come from large-scale manufacturing and industrial processes, not from individual consumers. Factories and industrial farms and global supply chains produce far more pollution than households or small businesses. And then I go in to present permaculture. So this whole article is designed to skip everything that would trigger a leftist and make them angry at you, right? This whole article is designed to begin shifting that Overton window so that they start to see, oh man, this is how these major corporations are lying to me, and this is how they're not even interested in changing the climate. So, guys, if you made it to the end of the video, wow, good job dealing with my rambling. Guys, please show people my articles. Please like and subscribe. I really appreciate you. These are designed to change minds. These are designed to start conversations. I'm really like, I'm not doing it for attention. I'm doing it to add things into the cultural zeitgeist and the conversation that I don't see there right now. And maybe I'm the idiot and it's all there, and I'm just repeating bullshit. But I really, guys, I think that there's some nuance to our dialogue that is very useful right now. And I think that a lot more people have a voice that is valuable than they realize. And I think that a lot of us from, the lower middle class, the lower classes, man, let's go, dude. Let's talk. Let's step up. Let's make our voices heard, man. Do your research first. Work on you first. You know what I mean? Get yourself psychologically healthy. Make sure that when you look in the mirror, you feel good about yourself. That's the number one thing, because if you don't look in the mirror and you feel good about yourself, you're not going to have the understanding to approach a lot of these things, because you might not realize it, but the reason why you look in the mirror and you don't feel good is a lot of times trauma, internalized insecurities, and things that would cause you to either internalize or externalize your problems that would frame things to you in a different way and cloud your judgment. So make sure you feel good when you look in the mirror first. But bro, don't let these class barriers prevent you from being a part of the dialogue. Be a part of the conversation. Embrace nuance. Embrace complexity. Things are complex out there. The universe we exist in is like a clock, and we are just one cog in that clock. Guys, understand there's balance. I got another article, Mastering the Tesseract, how to use the nature of the Tesseract, a fourth dimensional cube, in understanding how your reality is built around you and the nature of your perception, guys. So please check that stuff out. I really appreciate you for joining me. Whoa, this was a long one. Cool. I appreciate it. I got to do a couple of things that I think are important, though. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you guys in the next segment.